My new daughter-in-law humiliated me at my own son's wedding. In front of everyone, she pulled the chair out from under me, sending me crashing to the marble floor while guests gasped. Then she looked down at me and said, "Stay where you belong, Frank, with the help." They laughed. I stood, and God was watching. Because what she didn't know was that her own father was walking through those doors. And the man she had just mocked in front of hundreds? He wasn't just a mechanic from Detroit. He was the soldier who once saved her father's life. Some call it karma. I call it divine justice. Have you ever been publicly humiliated or witnessed someone else facing such a moment? Share your story in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Your insights could help others who are going through similar experiences. At my son's wedding, I searched for my seat among the family tables, my heart swelling with pride, despite the nervous flutter in my chest. 28 years of raising Michael alone, and here we were. Him in his sharp black tuxedo, me in my only good suit, pressed clean but showing its age. I found my name card, but not where I expected. Frank Stone, tucked between the photographer and the head caterer at table 12, far from the family section. My throat tightened. This was my place of honor, banished with the hired help. The photographer glanced at me sympathetically. "You must be Michael's father." Before I could respond, Victoria appeared in her pristine white gown, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Frank, there you are. I see you found your seat." "I think there's some mistake," I said quietly. "This is with the vendors." Her laugh tinkled like breaking china. "Oh, no mistake. I thought you'd be more comfortable here, with people who actually work for a living." The words stung deeper than any physical blow. I kept my voice steady. "Victoria, I'd like to sit with my family." "Your family?" She tilted her head, eyes sparkling with malice. "Michael's family is at the head table. You're different." I started moving toward the family section anyway, my dignity intact despite her cruelty. That's when she struck. As I reached for a chair at table 3, where Michael's relatives sat, Victoria stepped forward with practiced precision. Just as I began to lower myself, she yanked the chair back. My body hit the polished marble floor with a crack that silenced the string quartet. The sound echoed like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Then came scattered, uncomfortable laughter. Guests whispered behind gloved hands, while others stared in shock. Victoria stood over me, her dress pristine, smile never wavering. "Stay where you belong, Frank," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, with the help. My ribs ached, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation burning through my chest. I pushed myself up slowly, deliberately, the way a man stands when life has tried to knock him down before. Michael rushed over, face pale with horror. "Dad, are you okay? What happened?" "Just a little stumble, son," I managed, straightening my jacket. Victoria placed her hand on Michael's arm, voice dripping false concern. "Your father seemed dizzy. Maybe the excitement was too much." The lies came easily, wrapped in silk and delivered with a smile. I met her eyes, saw the cold satisfaction of someone who'd just won a battle I hadn't known we were fighting. That's when I heard them. Heavy footsteps crossing the marble floor, urgent and deliberate. The sound cut through resumed conversations, through the quartet's tentative melody. I turned toward the entrance, where a figure in a dark suit stood silhouetted against the afternoon light. The man stepped into the reception hall, silver hair catching the chandelier's glow, posture unmistakably military despite civilian clothes. His eyes swept the room, me rising from the floor, Victoria's triumphant smile, the scattered whispers of confused guests. Then his gaze found mine, and his face went white as death. "Dear God," he whispered, his voice carrying across the sudden quiet. "Sergeant Stone." The words hit the room like thunder, and everything changed. The voice calling me Sergeant Stone sent my mind spinning back 15 years. But first, it carried me even further, back to when Michael was barely walking, and my world had collapsed. Linda died on a Tuesday. Cancer took her in 3 months, faster than we could prepare. I remember standing in our Detroit kitchen, holding 18-month-old Michael, while he cried for his mama. "I promise you, Linda," I whispered to her photograph. "I'll give him everything." The garage became my second home. Frank's auto repair. Nothing fancy, just honest work. I'd bring Michael with me, when Mrs. Rodriguez couldn't watch him. He'd sit in that little blue chair I built, swinging his legs, handing me wrenches he could barely lift. "What's that sound, Daddy?" He'd ask about every engine knock. "That's just the car telling us what it needs," I'd explain, wiping grease before ruffling his hair. Long days, double shifts when I could get them, working weekends, taking any job that came through. My hands grew rough, my back ached, but Michael never went without. New shoes, school supplies, birthday parties with his friends. When he graduated high school with honors, I worked 3 months overtime, to buy him a decent car for college. Michigan State wasn't cheap, but I made it work. Ramen noodles for dinner so his tuition was paid. Patches on my work shirt so he could have new clothes. "Dad, you don't have to do this," he'd said, embarrassed by my sacrifice. "Son, everything I do is because I want to." He called every Sunday from his dorm. "How's the garage, Dad?" "Busy as always. How are your classes?" Those Sunday calls kept me going. Through the second mortgage, the credit card bills, the nights calculating numbers that never added up. He came home with his engineering degree. Got a job at Ford. Started building the life I'd dreamed for him. That's when he met Victoria, at some company function. Suddenly, my Sunday dinners became monthly visits, then holiday obligations. "She's amazing, Dad," he'd said, eyes bright. "She's sophisticated, educated, ambitious." What he didn't say was that she was everything his old man wasn't. Victoria swept into our lives, like a perfectly manicured storm, rearranging Michael's world. Suddenly, our neighborhood was unsafe. The garage was embarrassing. My work clothes were inappropriate for family photos. I watched my son slowly disappear into someone else's idea of who he should be. Now standing in this crystal palace, my ribs aching from the marble floor, I understood what Victoria had been doing. She wasn't just marrying Michael. She was erasing me. 3 weeks before the wedding, I stood outside Laranarda in Manhattan, adjusting my tie for the third time. Michael had insisted I meet Victoria's family at this upscale restaurant, and my stomach churned with more than hunger. "You'll love them, Dad," he'd said. "Victoria's mom is sweet, and her brother's a lawyer. Very successful family." The maitre d' looked at my department store suit, with barely concealed disdain, before leading me to a corner table, where Victoria sat with an elegant woman in pearls, and a sharp-dressed man checking his phone. "Frank?" Victoria's smile was bright as camera flash. "Meet my mother, Patricia, and my brother James." Patricia's handshake was limp, her eyes already dismissing me. James didn't look up from his phone. "So you're the mechanic," Patricia said, as if identifying a species of insect. "Auto repair," I corrected gently. "Been doing it for 25 years. "How authentic," she replied, the word dripping with condescension. Victoria ordered wine, a bottle that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. Stock portfolios, vacation homes in the Hamptons, private schools for future grandchildren. "Michael's doing so well at Ford," Victoria said, smiling. "Finally moving up in the world." The word finally hit like a slap, as if everything before her was just Michael marking time. When the food arrived, tiny portions arranged like art, I struggled with the multiple forks, while they discussed people I'd never heard of, doing things I couldn't afford. "Frank," Patricia suddenly addressed me, "what are your retirement plans?" "I'll probably work until I can't anymore," I answered honestly. "How unfortunate," she said, not sounding unfortunate at all. "Victoria and Michael won't have to worry about that. They'll be quite comfortable." The implication hung heavy. "Unlike you." James finally looked up from his phone. "Dad's not coming tonight. Business trip. You'll meet him at the wedding." "He'll adore Frank," Victoria said with that razor smile. "They'll have so much in common." When the check arrived, Victoria made a show of reaching for her purse, then stopped. "Oh, Frank, would you mind?" "It's tradition. The bride's family hosts. But since Daddy isn't here..." The total made my chest tight. $267, more than I spent on food in a month. But with 3 pairs of eyes watching, judging, I pulled out my credit card. "How generous," Patricia murmured. Walking to the subway afterward, Michael caught up with me. "Dad, you were quiet tonight." "Just listening, son. Learning about Victoria's world." "And, what do you think?" I looked at my boy, my brilliant, kind, hardworking son, who'd been raised to treat everyone with respect. "I think she's very different from us." "Different isn't bad, Dad." "No," I agreed softly. "But it's not always good either." That night, lying in my small Detroit bedroom, I stared at the ceiling and understood something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't nervousness about meeting new family. This was a test, one designed for me to fail. Victoria hadn't just invited me to dinner. She'd invited me to my own humiliation, gift-wrapped in fine dining and false smiles, and I'd paid for the privilege. The wedding was 3 weeks away, and I already knew I was walking into enemy territory. 1 week after that expensive dinner, I was under the hood of a Ford pickup when I heard heels clicking on garage concrete. Victoria stood in my workspace. Her designer coat is out of place, as a diamond in a toolbox. "Frank, we need to talk." She'd never visited my garage before. I wiped my hands on a rag, noting how her nose wrinkled at the motor oil smell. "What can I do for you, Victoria?" "It's about Michael, about boundaries." She stepped around an oil stain, heels clicking like a countdown. "When people get married, they start new lives." I set down my wrench. "What kind of boundaries?" "Michael needs space to grow, to become the man he's meant to be." Her smile could cut steel. Someone who fits in my world. Not someone dragging around blue-collar baggage. You're talking about his family. I'm talking about moving forward instead of backward. She examined her manicured nails. Michael's been offered a position in our New York office. Excellent opportunity. Chance to really make something of himself. He already has made something of himself. Has he? She laughed, the sound echoing off garage walls. Frank, look around. This is what he's running from. I stepped closer. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition that she was in my territory. Now let me be clear, she continued. The wedding is in 2 weeks. After that, Michael and I start fresh. Clean slate. That means less interference from his past. Interference? I'm his father. You're his old life. Her voice turned winter cold. And old lives hold people back from their potential. I'd heard enough. Victoria, I think you should leave. Of course. She turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Frank, that dinner last week. Consider it a going-away party. After the wedding, these family gatherings won't be necessary. She clicked toward her BMW, then called back over her shoulder. Michael doesn't need his past holding him back. Neither do I. I watched her taillights disappear into the Detroit afternoon. Mrs. Rodriguez peeked from her kitchen window. She'd heard every word. That evening, I sat staring at Linda's photograph. She wants to erase us, honey, I whispered. Pretend Michael sprang into existence the day he met her. The house felt smaller, suddenly shabbier. I saw it through Victoria's eyes. Worn furniture, family photos everywhere, a working man's life built from nothing. But this wasn't nothing. This was love. This was sacrifice. 28 years of a father raising a good man. I picked up my phone to call Michael, then set it down. What would I say? That his fiancée had declared war on his family? No, Victoria had made her move. Now I had to decide mine. The wedding was 13 days away, and I finally understood what I was fighting for. Not just my relationship with my son, but his very soul. 2 days after Victoria's garage visit, I found myself at Murphy's Diner on 8 Mile, staring into black coffee, and wrestling with demons I couldn't name. That's when Sam Martinez slid into the booth across from me. You look like hell, Frank. Sam and I had served together in Afghanistan. Different units, but we'd shared enough foxholes and bad MREs to recognize trouble in each other's faces. Now he worked as a paralegal downtown, kept his ear to the ground. Woman problems, I said. The kind that wear wedding dresses. I managed a weak smile. My son's getting married in 11 days. His fiancée wants me out of the picture. Sam stirred sugar into his coffee. Tell me about her. So I did. The restaurant humiliation. The garage confrontation. The way she looked at my neighborhood, like it carried disease. Sam listened without interrupting, his lawyer-trained mind cataloging details. Victoria Hayes, he said when I finished, works at Cromwell Baxter and Associates. You know her? Know of her. His expression darkened. Frank, your future daughter-in-law isn't just ambitious. She's ruthless. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through notes. Victoria Hayes, 26 years old. Graduated law school with honors. Specializes in corporate acquisitions. Also specializes in acquiring things that aren't for sale. What do you mean? 3 months ago, she convinced an elderly client to change his will, cutting out his son, who'd cared for him for years. Last year, she helped a developer force out a family bakery that had been in business for 50 years. Sam met my eyes. She sees people as obstacles or assets, nothing in between. My stomach turned. And Michael? Asset. Young, successful engineer with a clean reputation. And no baggage except, Sam gestured at me, except his blue-collar father. Exactly. Sam leaned forward. Frank, men like her don't just want to win. They want to erase any evidence they ever had competition. The diner felt smaller suddenly, the coffee bitter in my mouth. So what do? You don't fight fire with fire. You let her burn herself out. Sam's voice carried the authority of someone who'd seen real combat. People like Victoria make mistakes. When they think they've already won, they get sloppy, overconfident. And if she doesn't make mistakes, then you make sure Michael sees who she really is before it's too late. Sam reached across the table, gripped my shoulder. But Frank, don't try to tear them apart. Just be there when the mask falls off. Because it will. Walking back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't felt since Victoria first walked into our lives. Hope. Not the desperate kind that clings to impossible dreams, but the steady kind that comes from having a battle plan. Sam was right. Victoria would make mistakes. People like her always did. Because they couldn't imagine a world where their charm didn't work, where their money didn't matter, where someone might value character over status. I had 11 days until the wedding. 11 days to be the father Michael needed, not the enemy Victoria wanted me to become. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt like I might actually win it. The call came at 11:30 the night before the wedding. I was sitting in my living room, staring at the suit I'd pressed for tomorrow, when my phone rang. "Dad?" Michael's voice cracked like he was 12 years old again. "What's wrong, son?" Silence stretched across the line, filled with the sound of Detroit traffic outside my window, and something heavier, the weight of doubt pressing down on a young man's shoulders. "Can you come over? I know it's late, but I need to talk to someone." 20 minutes later, I stood in Michael's downtown apartment. He answered the door in wrinkled clothes. Hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed. The place was immaculate as always, Victoria's influence. But Michael looked like he'd been pacing for hours. "She's at her bachelorette party," he said, pouring coffee with shaking hands. "Won't be back until morning." I sat on his pristine white couch, the one Victoria had picked, because it was sophisticated. Everything in the apartment was sophisticated. Cold, expensive, and nothing like the warm chaos of the home where I'd raised him. "Talk to me, Michael." He collapsed into the chair across from me. "Dad, what if I'm making a mistake?" The question hung between us like a loaded gun. I'd been waiting weeks to hear it. But now that it was here, I chose my words carefully. "What makes you think that?" "Little things. The way she talks about our old neighborhood. About you, about—" He rubbed his face with both hands. "Last week she told me we should consider moving to New York after the honeymoon. Fresh start, she called it. And how do you feel about that?" "Scared." The word came out barely above a whisper. "Dad, I love her, I do. But sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into who she wants me to be." I leaned forward. "Tell me." "She doesn't like when I mention growing up here. Says it makes me sound limited. She wants me to say I went to private school instead of Detroit Public. She even suggested I tell people you're retired instead of still working." Each word was a knife twist. But I kept my face neutral. "And what do you tell people?" "The truth. That my dad is the hardest working man I know. That he sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities he never had." Michael's voice grew stronger. "But she gets this look, like I've embarrassed her. Son, do you remember what I told you when you got that scholarship to Michigan State?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "That I earned it, but I should never forget where I came from." "And do you remember why I said that?" "Because where we come from doesn't define our limits, but it defines our values." I nodded. "The question isn't whether Victoria loves you, Michael. The question is whether she loves who you really are, or just who she thinks you could become." He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Hands that had learned to work alongside mine in the garage. Hands that had hugged me tight when Linda died. Hands that were about to put a ring on a woman who wanted to erase half of who he was. "I don't know what to do, Dad." "You don't have to decide tonight, son. But tomorrow, when you're standing at that altar, ask yourself one question. Does this woman make you want to be a better version of yourself, or a different person entirely?" I stood to leave, kissed the top of his head like I had when he was small. "Whatever you decide, I'll be there." That's what fathers do. Driving home through empty Detroit streets, I felt something shift in my chest. Not victory. This wasn't about winning. It was about truth. Finally having room to breathe. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight my son was remembering who he really was. The morning of the wedding broke clear and cold. October's sunlight streaming through my bedroom window like a promise. I'd barely slept after Michael's call, but I felt steady as I pressed my navy suit one final time. In the bathroom mirror, I saw a man of 58 years, gray threading through brown hair, lines carved deep by weather and worry. Not handsome, not wealthy, but honest. Linda's ring hung warm against my chest on its silver chain. My talisman, my reminder of promises kept. "Whatever happens today, honey," I whispered to her photograph. I did my best. The church was beautiful, St. Mary's downtown, where Linda and I had been married 30 years ago. Ironic that Victoria had chosen it, probably for its elegant architecture, rather than its meaning to our family. I arrived early, watching guests filter in, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. Michael stood at the altar in his black tuxedo, hands clasped, eyes searching the pews until they found mine. I nodded once, steady, calm, present. Whatever doubts had kept him awake last night, he'd made his choice to be here. Victoria appeared at the back of the church, like something from a magazine cover. Her dress was stunning, her smile radiant, every detail perfect. For a moment, I could see what Michael saw in her: beauty, confidence, the promise of a glittering future. The ceremony proceeded with practiced precision. When the officiant asked who gave this woman in marriage, Victoria's brother James stood with theatrical flair. When he asked who gave this man, I rose quietly from the third pew. "His father," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sanctuary. Victoria's smile flickered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. The vows were spoken, rings exchanged, the kiss shared to polite applause. Michael was married, and I was officially relegated to his past. The reception hall at the Detroit Athletic Club gleamed with crystal and white roses. I'd been here once before. At a company dinner Michael had invited me 2 years ago. Then I'd felt proud to be his guest. Today I felt like an intruder. I searched for my name among the elegant place cards at the family tables. Frank Stone should have been at table 2 with Michael's relatives, or table 3 with close family friends. Instead, I found it tucked between Davidson Photography and Premier Catering at table 12. My throat tightened. 28 years of raising Michael alone, and Victoria had seated me with the hired help. The photographer noticed my confusion. "You must be Michael's father. I've heard wonderful things about you." Before I could respond, Victoria appeared beside me, in her flowing white gown, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Frank, there you are. I see you found your seat. I think there might be some mistake," I said quietly, holding up the card. "This is with the vendors." Her laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. "Oh, no mistake. I thought you'd be more comfortable here, with people who actually work for a living." The words stung deeper than any physical blow, but I kept my voice level. "Victoria, I'd like to sit with my family." "Your family?" She tilted her head, eyes sparkling with malice. "Michael's family is at the head table. You're different." "Well, you're different." I looked across the room at table 2, where Michael's grandmother sat with other relatives, an empty chair waiting. My chair, the one Victoria had deliberately moved. "I think I'll sit where I belong," I said, starting toward the family section. That's when she made her move. I walked toward table 2 with quiet determination, my dress shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. Michael's grandmother looked up and smiled, patting the empty chair beside her. "Frank, dear, we saved you a seat." Before I could reach the chair, Victoria appeared like a shadow in white silk. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes burned with cold fury. "Frank, I really think you'd be more comfortable at your assigned table," she said. Her voice, honey-sweet, but loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I'm comfortable with my family," I replied, reaching for the chair. That's when she struck. Just as I began to lower myself, Victoria stepped forward with practiced precision and yanked the chair back. My body hit the marble floor hard, the crack echoing through the reception hall like a gunshot. The string quartet faltered mid-note. Conversations died. Crystal glasses paused halfway to lips. For one breathless moment, the entire reception hall froze. Then came the laughter. Scattered, uncomfortable, but there nonetheless. Guests whispered behind gloved hands, while others stared in shock. I lay there for a moment, feeling the cold marble against my back, my ribs aching where they'd struck the floor. Victoria stood over me, her wedding dress pristine, her smile never faltering. "Stay where you belong, Frank," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the sudden quiet. With the help, I pushed myself up slowly, deliberately, the way a man stands, when life has tried to knock him down before. My hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the effort of restraining 28 years of protective instincts. Michael rushed over, his face pale with horror. "Dad, are you okay? What happened?" "Just a little stumble, son," I managed, straightening my jacket. I wouldn't let him see how deep the cut went. Victoria placed her manicured hand on Michael's arm, her voice dripping false concern. "Your father seemed dizzy. Maybe the excitement was too much for him." The lies came so easily, wrapped in silk and delivered with a smile. Around us, guests began to murmur, some looking embarrassed, others entertained by the drama. The photographer had lowered his camera, unsure whether this moment belonged in the wedding album. I met Victoria's eyes and saw the cold satisfaction there, the look of someone who'd just won a battle. I hadn't known we were fighting. This wasn't about a chair or a table assignment. This was about power, about putting me in my place once and for all. That's when I heard them. Heavy footsteps crossing the marble floor, urgent and deliberate. The sound cut through the resumed conversations, through the quartet's tentative return to melody. I turned toward the entrance, where a figure in a dark suit stood silhouetted against the afternoon light. The man stepped into the reception hall, his silver hair catching the chandelier's glow, his posture unmistakably military, despite the civilian clothes. His eyes swept the room, taking in the scene, me rising from the floor, Victoria's triumphant smile, Michael's confused horror, the scattered whispers of uncomfortable guests. Then his gaze found mine, and his face went white as death. "Dear God," he whispered, his voice carrying across the sudden quiet. "Sergeant Stone." The words hit the reception hall like thunder. Heads turned. Conversation stopped completely. Even Victoria's smile flickered, as she looked from the stranger to me, confusion replacing her earlier satisfaction. I recognized him now. Older, grayer, but unmistakable. Robert Hayes, Victoria's father, the man I'd carried 300 yards through Taliban gunfire. 15 years ago in Afghanistan. The silence following Robert Hayes's words was deafening. Every eye turned from him to me, trying to piece together a puzzle they didn't know existed. Robert stepped forward, his military bearing evident despite 15 years in civilian life. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to understand something." His voice carried clearly across the marble floor. "This man is Sergeant Frank Stone. In 2009 in Afghanistan, he saved my life." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face went pale beneath her wedding makeup. "I was a lieutenant colonel then, leading a convoy through hostile territory. We hit an IED. My vehicle flipped, caught fire. I was trapped, bleeding." His voice cracked with emotion. "Sergeant Stone ran through enemy gunfire, pulled me from that burning wreck, and carried me 300 yards to safety." The reception hall fell silent, except for the chandeliers humming overhead. "Without this man," Robert continued, "I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have walked my daughter down the aisle." He paused, his voice growing harder. "And 5 minutes ago, I watched that daughter humiliate her hero at her own wedding." Michael stepped forward, shock and understanding dawning on his face. "Dad, you never told me." "Your father," Robert interrupted, "is the most honorable man I've ever known. He asked for nothing in return. No recognition, no reward. He did what needed to be done, because that's who he is." Victoria finally found her voice, barely a whisper. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Robert replied sharply. "You saw a mechanic from Detroit and decided he wasn't worth your time. You saw working hands and assumed they'd never done anything important." I stood quietly, watching my son's face as truth settled over him. This wasn't about vindication. It was about Michael seeing clearly. "Victoria," Michael said slowly, "you made him sit with the vendors. You pulled his chair away. You called him help." She reached for him, but he stepped back. "Michael, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been ashamed of my father? That you wanted to erase where I came from?" His voice grew stronger. "Dad raised me to believe a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account. It's measured by his character." Robert walked over, extended his hand. "Sergeant Stone, it's an honor to see you again. I've thought about you every day for 15 years. I shook his hand, feeling old brotherhood. "Just Frank now, Colonel. Good to see you alive and well." Michael approached, eyes bright with tears. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let her." "Son," I interrupted gently, "you have nothing to apologize for. You followed your heart. That's what I raised you to do." Victoria stood alone in her wedding dress, surrounded by guests, who now looked at her with disappointment and disgust. Her fairy tale was crumbling. "Michael," she tried once more, "we can work through this." He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly removed his wedding ring. "Victoria, I thought I loved you, but I loved who I was pretending to be for you. That's not the same thing." As we walked toward the exit, father and son, I felt Linda's ring warm against my chest. The promise I'd made 28 years ago was kept. I'd protected our boy, not from making choices, but from losing himself in someone else's vision. Outside, October air was crisp and clean. Michael put his arm around my shoulders. "Dad, can we go home? To the real home?" "Always, son, always." In a world full of betrayal stories, Frank Stone's experience teaches us that character isn't built in moments of comfort. It's forged in moments of humiliation. When Victoria yanked that chair away, she revealed more about herself than she ever did about Frank. God has a way of using our enemies' actions to showcase our true strength. The most powerful grandpa stories aren't found in history books. They're lived out in garages, at kitchen tables, and in quiet moments of sacrifice that no one else sees. Frank's journey from that marble floor to vindication reminds us that the Lord sees every act of service, every tear shed for family, every dollar stretched to make dreams possible. What makes betrayal stories so compelling is watching how people respond when their integrity is tested. Michael had to choose between the glittering life Victoria offered and the authentic love his father had always provided. Sometimes God allows us to be knocked down so we can see who truly helps us stand back up. These grandpa stories prove that real wealth isn't measured in stock portfolios or designer clothes. It's measured in the lives we touch and the values we pass down. Frank's legacy wasn't built in boardrooms. It was built in moments of choosing his son's well-being over his own comfort, trusting that God would honor his faithfulness. True nobility comes from noble actions, not noble birth. Did Frank's journey of resilience and redemption inspire you to reflect on your own family bonds? Drop a comment sharing what this story meant to you. Your insights could encourage someone else who's facing similar challenges. Hit subscribe to join our community of storytellers and share this powerful reminder that love and truth always triumph over pride and pretense.